Hey, welcome to this very special meeting of Transcribimus. And we just wanted to just acknowledge that we've got Lynn Shane and Carol Wilson, who have really stepped up and been really helping to keep this organization going. And we have about maybe 50 or more volunteers over the years under the steady guidance of Margaret Sutherland, who have been transcribing old documents, handwritten documents from Vancouver archives mostly. The transcribers that have so far transcribed about 6,000 pages of minutes, mostly some journals, but mostly the Vancouver City Council minutes from 1886, and we're even getting into 1901 now. I think we're starting to move. We still have to do more work on 1900, but fantastic. And the volunteers and Margaret have been having these bi-weekly or bi-monthly Zoom sessions, and even starting now to have guest speakers. And so this is a really important day for us, and I want to introduce Lynn Shane. She's a retired librarian, and she has just taken on so much, going down to the archives, taking pictures of old minutes so people could use them, and really taking a very wonderful leadership role. So Lynn, why don't you introduce our special speaker for today?
Our inaugural speaker. Firstly, I'd like to say how very pleased we are to share the research of one of our most experienced transcribers. Gerald Soon has volunteered with Transcribimus since 2018, and he's transcribed well over 50 sets of City Council minutes, and as well as other historical documents. Gerald is a third-generation Chinese Canadian. He's an educator, and he's worked at all levels of schooling, including as a sessional instructor in the UBC Faculty of Education. He retired after working a number of years as an elementary school principal. Gerald is keenly interested in the history of the Chinese in BC and has presented to his grandchildren's teachers classes about the paper trail, focusing on the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1923 and the resulting documentation of the Chinese community. He and his extended family are very involved in celebrating their unique place in Vancouver history. They have established the Soon Family Foundation with the Vancouver Foundation to honor the Soon family and to provide support to families in need. If you have any questions during Gerald's presentation, please put them in the chat and he will answer them at the end of his talk. Thank you, and over to you, Gerald.
Hey, thank you so much. I'm just going to share my screen. Oops. Now what I'm going to do is close off my view of the thumbnail. So I think everybody should be able to see Soon Key and his legacy. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'll begin my presentation. I've been involved transcribing minutes with the Transcribimus project for a number of years. And Transcribimus volunteers read handwritten Vancouver City Council minutes of meetings and put them into digital form. The project was begun by Sam Sullivan, former mayor of Vancouver, and it's important work as it makes Vancouver City history accessible to everyone. One of the benefits of doing this work is having access to websites such as ancestry.com and newspapers.ca. I appreciated being asked to share some part of my family's history today and the support I've had from my family while I've been preparing this presentation. I believe my Uncle Jerry the second youngest child of Soon Key, is watching today, my Uncle Jerry, and I thank him for his support and encouragement. Out of interest one day, I typed in my grandfather's name on the newspaper site and discovered a link that my family has to Canadian history. I had no idea of his involvement or of the newspaper coverage of his testimony in a major event of Vancouver's history. One of Soon Key's sons, Bill or William, wrote down information about his father's village. I'm giving you a little bit of background about my grandfather first. It's noted on the paper that his name was pronounced Soon Key. Note that the Chinese way of saying one's name is with the surname first. I found this interesting as all my life I've been saying my grandfather's name as Soon Key. I asked my Uncle Jerry how he pronounced his father's name, and he said that he'd always known it to be Soon Key. I'm thinking that with this evidence and the newspaper clippings I have found, and the records with the Vancouver City that I have found point to Soon Key as the pronunciation he used in his life. Some spellings in Vancouver City records have his name as Soon K-A-Y, and so for my presentation, I am using Soon Key. My grandfather arrived, we think, in 1890, although our family has documentation that says he arrived in 1892. However, there is a document that says he arrived in 1890 and he established his business at that time. Soon Key's documentation for entering the United States indicates that he was a merchant and that he established his business with an investment of gold worth $30,000. Quite a sum of money considering those times. Tysing and Company was located at 19 Pender Street. Now, if you face the Chinatown Millennium Gate and look beyond and to the right, you will note there's a parking lot for a building, and that is where number 19 Pender Street was located. The street behind you, East Pender, was named DuPont Street until 1907. Now, the name was changed and it became East Pender, and all addresses to the west of Carroll became West Pender. The name DuPont was changed because the street had some negative reputations for brothels and opium dens. In 1902, Soon Key becomes a naturalized British subject, and in 1904, he has a passport issued by the Canadian government. 1907. In 1907, there were approximately 11,000 Asian immigrants, mostly from Japan, that had come to Canada in search of a better life. However, there was high unemployment in British Columbia at the time, and the Vancouver Trades and Labor Council formed the Asiatic Exclusion League. There had been an Asiatic Exclusion League formed in the United States 2 years prior. Now, this group was made up of some prominent Vancouver politicians as well, Mayor Bethune and several city councillors. The belief was that Asian workers were taking labor jobs from white people, especially because they would work for less wages. Their aim as an organization was to, quote, keep Oriental immigrants out of British Columbia. Their slogan, keep Canada white and stop the yellow peril. On September 7th, 1907, an anti-Asiatic parade to City Hall was to take place. J.A. Russell, Christopher Foley, Charles Wilson, and A.E. Fowler from Washington State were to speak on the ill effects of Asiatic immigration in Washington. There was not enough room for the large number of people who showed up for the talks, and the large crowd was agitated. After rousing speeches, including one by Fowler, who not only called for a stop to the immigration, he called also for the expulsion of those Asians who were already in British Columbia. A boy threw a brick through a window, And that was the spark that exploded into the ensuing destruction. Soon testifies at the Mackenzie King Royal Commission. I discovered an image of my grandfather on the front page of the Vancouver Province of May the 27th, 1908. I further discovered in reading the article that he spoke English, which is something I didn't know. The King Commission ultimately granted the Chinese community $26,990 in compensation. The Japanese community was given $9,036 in costs. A further result of the race riots was a gentleman's agreement restricting Japanese immigration to Canada to 400 per year. Further, Mackenzie King was alarmed at the opium trade being done in Vancouver's Chinatown, and that resulted in anti-narcotic laws being enacted in Canada. Now, my grandfather claimed $516 in damages. That was for supplies that he purchased to protect the business, hacks, which were like cabs that were people with buggies and horses, to move his family to safety, lanterns, lost income, and board for the people that he protected who came to him during the riots. I found it interesting that he also had a claim for a rifle and ammunition to protect his family. In the end, in the final report, Soon was awarded $88.25 for damages and $500 for resultant losses. That was more than he had asked for. Exploring photos from the Vancouver Public Library files, I looked at one that I'd seen many times before, like on the Knowledge Network, in books and so on. And something caught my eye, the number on the business and then the name. This was the Tai Sing and Company. I shared the photo with my family, and my uncle confirmed that indeed my grandfather is in the photo. I believe that the child is Harold, the firstborn son. So my Uncle Jerry explained to me about what my grandfather would do. Men from China came looking for work, and my grandfather helped them to find employment with the shingle mills that were located at Stave Lake and the Capilano Timber Company. In doing my research, I found further evidence of what my grandfather had done in Vancouver. He headed a syndicate that arranged to purchase property where Thomas Dunn and Company had a warehouse. And for those people who are transcribing minutes, you will recognize the Thomas Dunn Company as one that the city did a lot of business with.
Yeah.
Further development in Vancouver, done by my grandfather. I discovered that in 1912 and 1913, he and his partners developed or altered 3 properties, one being the building where Ming Wo was later established. And my grandfather was also involved in the Chinese community in supporting Dr. Sun Yat-sen. In this photo, you'll see a drum corps that was raising money for him. And my grandfather is the one on the far right. Now, in 1923, the Chinese Exclusion Act came into force. The doors to Canada were basically closed to Chinese. Everyone was deemed alien, even if they were born here. Every Chinese person had to be identified, and they had to carry documentation or risk a fine, detainment, or deportation. They are denied the right to vote, to hold certain positions of employment in society, And the Chinese men who had come to Canada to seek a better life were cut off from wives and families in China, resulting in a bachelor society. During the time that the act was law, as few as 12 Chinese persons, to as many as possibly 50, were allowed in. The exact number is not known. The law was repealed on May the 14th, 1947. So my grandfather would have been aware of the change as he passed away on September 3rd in 1947. I'm so thankful to Catherine Clement for the research that she had done and for her efforts to make the paper trail known. Now,
sorry, I don't understand.
oh, okay. I've got Soon Key's documentation here. Note that the family names are included, including the woman who was the maid who helped to look after the Soon family. She took on the Soon name, married, and then moved to Prince Rupert. Sons and daughters are also listed on the form, and any facial markings, they're noted as well. As well, proof of entry into Canada is noted, along with the amounts of money paid in head tax and certificate numbers. I'm going to divert a little bit and show you my mother. This is the certificate that I discovered when I was going through my mom's things late in her life. I asked her what it was, and she said, oh, that's just my identification. I didn't think anything more of it until Catherine Clement put an all call out to people who possibly had forms such as this. Note on the very bottom, it says, this certificate does not establish legal status in Canada, even though she had been born here. And for every document such as this is the one that people carried along with them. There was a record, and here's my mother's record. Note that handwritten on the form is Mrs. Henry Soon. My mother was 3 years old when the certificate was issued. The government kept track of Chinese. In my research and looking for my aunts and uncles and all of their forms, I came across other people. There was a toddler, and on her form, it read, widowed in 1967. Truly a paper trail. Now, here is Sincere Grocery, 995 Robson Street in 1926. Soon Key established a grocery store, which was managed by my father, Henry. The store was a successful business for many years, and eventually the property was sold as the second Vancouver Public Library was to be built on the corner of Robson and Georgia, prime space in downtown Vancouver. Now, the photo. In 1927, the family gathers for 2 photos at the Wand Studio. For many years, this was the only photograph that the family had of almost all of the family, missing our 3 sons yet to be born, including my Uncle Jerry. And we have a mystery photo. In this photo, a number of Soon Key's children have had their photo taken. Only the elder children, who are 14 years of age and older, are in the photo. But there's one man sitting next to Harold and my Uncle Bill that no one in the family can identify. And speaking about Harold, the man in the tuxedo. Harold, the eldest child, was sent to Chicago to be educated to be a dentist. His office in 1930 was located at the bank building on the corner of Main and Pender. And this practice at that time was in an office next door to W.A. Cumio, and the transcribers will recognize his name. So here's a photo of the building that I found to be his office from a guide that I found in the Vancouver Public Library, the Wrigley's Guide. So he was in room 8 at 501 Main. But his office may have moved at one point because my Uncle Jerry recalls Harold working on his teeth. Can you imagine working on your brother's teeth? And that was at a location very near the Ho Ho restaurant. And now some further history of my family. Uncle Jack, the hero of Chinatown in 1933. For those of you who don't know, the Mainland Cup was a knockout competition for lower mainland soccer clubs in BC. And that was a competition that ran between the years of 1907 and 1955. It was donated by William Bowser, a politician who later became the premier of BC in 1915. The Chinese students' soccer team. On May the 29th in 1933, the championship game of the Mainland Cup took place. The Chinese students were playing the favored UBC varsity team. The Chinese students played in this game in front of 1,000 spectators, and they watched this happen at Con Jones Park. And it was a very tight game with the score being tied 3-3 on goals by Buck Singh, Queenie Yip, and Horn Yip. My Uncle Jack scored the winning goal in the very last minute. The fans swept onto the field to celebrate, and the victory party poured down Pender Street. And as the players rode in an open car, they held a 3-foot-high trophy up in the air. And the following day, it was declared a holiday in Chinatown. And there was free tea and dim sum for everyone. Can you imagine? Further family interesting stories. This is my beautiful Auntie Anne. She acted in the movie Cousins, starring Ted Danson in 1989. My aunt, at the age of 80, became an extra in the movie. She was acclaimed for her portrayal of a Chinese fish salesperson. And I remember her telling me that all she had to do was swing her cleaver down hard onto the cutting board, chop off the fish's head, and yell in Chinese. And she said, to make it more effective, I took my teeth out. And she won an award as Extra of the Year for that performance. Now, an interesting part of our family history, a journey to find our roots. Many of the children of Soon Ki journeyed back to China. Daughter Lily found love in Hong Kong and established her life and family there. Some, like my father Henry and my Uncle Bill, went back and stayed for a number of years, and then they returned. But in my generation, none had gone back until my Uncle Edward, or Teddy's son, Wayne, went on a voyage of discovery. There's my Uncle Teddy from that iconic photo. Cousin Wayne attempts to find the home. In 1992, only having a handwritten rough instructions written by our Uncle Bill, the number 2 son, Wayne, his wife and daughters went on a journey to try to locate Shabian or Sarbian outside of Hong Kong. They hired a taxi driver who had the ability to speak both Cantonese and Mandarin, and the driver knew the area and said that the road to the area had just been paved about a year before, and the population was about 10,000 people. Most, of course, had the surname Soon. The driver asked where they wanted to go, and Wayne said, well, take me to the center of the village. I just want to take a photo so I could tell my family I've been to the ancestral area. Likely there would be no relations living. The driver asked Wayne, didn't he want to see the ancestral home or find relatives? He asked how old our grandfather would be if he were still alive. And Wayne's reply was, well, he would be over 100 years old. The taxi driver felt that there would be no problem, that surely somebody would remember the name of this family. First, the driver asked elderly people if they knew of anyone related to Soon Wangum Cook, who was our grandmother. But no one recognized the name. And after a while, the driver started asking about Soon Key, and the two elderly men pointed in a direction where possibly people might know. They stopped in front of a two-story home that was under renovation, and the driver started a conversation with the people of the home. Wayne asked what they were talking about and asked who the people were. The taxi driver explained, well, these are your relatives. Wayne and his family were unsure, but the elder of the home explained that he was the nephew of Soon Key. He was Soon Yun Tim, the son of Soon Sing Bong, who was Soon Key's younger cousin. He explained that the house had been left by Soon Key to Soon Sing Bong, and now he and his family lived in the home. Wayne was skeptical and thought that perhaps there was another Soon Key. But Yun Tin's wife went in and brought out a photograph that she had found in the upstairs of the home. It was the same photograph that Wayne had a copy of. The taxi driver's persistence had brought them to Soon Key's home. Cindy Leong, Wayne and his wife Jane's niece through Jane's family, wrote about the encounter, and it was published in the South China Morning Post on August the 10th in 1992. And here's a photograph of the article. And there is my cousin Wayne, his wife and their two kids, and the family who were living in my grandfather's home at that time. Now, the story is not finished because Edward, Uncle Teddy's daughter, Jade, went on her own journey to find the ancestral home in 2012, 20 years later. Jane and her husband, Vlad, went on their own journey to see if they could locate the family and ancestral home. And through their son's friend in Shanghai, they were able to translate into Mandarin what they were seeking. At that time, they didn't have technological devices to assist them, and they went only with their translated note about what they were seeking and an old map. They followed villagers down narrow streets for a while, and they would show them the note that they had and say that they were Canada, and the people were quite excited and would say, welcome Canada, hello Canada, but they couldn't help them anymore until finally they walked and they came across what they thought was possibly Soon Key's home. They were welcomed into the home, still unsure if it was the right house. The Soon relative's mother again went upstairs and again produced the framed Soon family photograph. They knew then that they were in the ancestral home, reunited again. And Jade was able to take some photos of the very old kitchen with a giant wok. And here's the grandmother next to the dry leaves that are stockpiled for kindling. This woman is Yun Tin's wife. She is the one that had produced the photo when Wayne and his family arrived 20 years earlier. And here they are, Vlad, Jade, and the family. But the story continues. In 2018, after an email connection, Uncle Teddy, his grandson Tyler, went on his own journey to the ancestral home. And Jade had an email for someone, and so Tyler contacted them, and they arranged to meet at the end of the ferry ride to mainland China on March the 10th in 2018. On this trip, Tyler would not need to have a taxi driver or a map to meet the family once they cleared customs. It was a joyous occasion for the family to be reunited again. And now, on this trip, it would be bittersweet. The elderly mother who had brought down the family photo had passed away since Jade's visit, but a new generation of the Soon family had been born. The family photo did accompany Tyler, but this time, however, it was digitally on Tyler's phone. And while he was there, they had seen photographs from Jade's visit as they were framed and on the wall. The last generation of the Soon family may have inhabited the home, as when Tyler visited, only the elder Soon lived in the house, staying close to the shrine, honoring the past Soon family. The children and his wife were now living in more modern accommodations. And some further interesting things about our family. My Aunt Edna, one of the young girls in the photo, she eventually moved to San Francisco and married a restaurateur named Ki Jun, which brings the family to a connection with a celebrity. Louis Armstrong. Edna and Ki Jun's restaurant, the Imperial Palace, was well known for hosting celebrities. Edna recommended to Louis Satchmo Armstrong that if he were to ever come to Vancouver, he had to look up her brother Henry, who was my dad. Armstrong came to Vancouver and did exactly that. And on December the 9th, in 1962, the Soon family went to the Golden Horseshoe, which was a restaurant located very near the PNE, across from it. And they went for a Chinese banquet. And following the banquet, Armstrong and his wife, Lucille, came to our family home for drinks and of all things, to watch Ed Sullivan, because that's what you did. It was during that visit that Armstrong noted that the Christmas season was going to be great, as he and Lucille would be home. Shortly after that, on live TV, Ed Sullivan announced that the Christmas show would be telecast from the Guantanamo Naval Base in Cuba, and one of the troupe would be Satchmo, a surprise to him. And this was reported by Jack Wasserman in his column the following week. But all that time that Louis Armstrong was in town, the family went out with him and entertained him. In the days following, he and Lucille went with some of the aunts and uncles. Sitting next to Satchmo was my Auntie Elaine, who had a son, Daryl, who told me that he was mortified when she mentioned to Louis, "Oh, my son Daryl plays the trumpet." Our family was very close. The Soon brothers and sisters maintained their family ties throughout the years. My father and mother hosted a large family for a reunion every spring, where we would go to the cemetery to honor Soon Ki and Soon Wang Shi. And there would be a large party followed by playing of mahjong and dancing. And all of us young kids would just have a wonderful time playing. And then we would eat together at a banquet down in Chinatown. Our family had a reunion in 2001. And it was, there were so many people in our family at that time that a hall had to be rented to accommodate everyone. And just recently, in September, Soon Ki's grandson, Ronald, my Auntie Lily's son, and his wife came from Hong Kong because they're planning on living here now. And the cousins who were available went down for a brief reunion lunch. Now, the Soon Family Fund This was established in 2015 by Charles's family. Randy's here. Hello, Randy. And he organized this. It was a way to give back to this community that our family is so attached to. It's a fund to assist families and children in Vancouver and the Lower Mainland. So Soon Ki came from a village in China seeking a better life. He established his family and he contributed to Canadian society. He lived through an era of racial tension, restrictions, discrimination, but his family flourished. His descendants have followed his lead and have met success in society and have contributed much to Vancouver and to Canada. And as you can see from the list, there are no longer restrictions on what people can do or the possibilities, and we're so thankful for that. And I'll leave you with this iconic photo that I put the names of all of the aunts and uncles. There are children yet to be born. There are children who had been born and who had passed away. But that's my family, and I have appreciated very much the closeness that they have had and what they have contributed to our society. So this is my family and my grandfather's legacy, and I thank you for having me.
Oh, you have to unmute, Lynn.
Did you hear me?
Now, no.
But you can now. Thank you, Gerald. I just wanted to say, as expected, that was a splendid talk. And I envy you the closeness you have with your extended family. It really is a gift. So thank you for putting all that together. It's a tremendous amount of work, I know. Does anybody have any questions for Gerald?
Oh, let's see.
I found it interesting that among all the wonderful professions, your family has developed a stand-up comedian.
Yes, we do have one.
That's great that it was mentioned.
I wondered, Gerald, like how many years have you been working on this?
How many years have I been working on
Getting this presentation together?
I only started doing this a few weeks ago when I was asked to present information about our family to today, but it's been quite intense. But I've enjoyed searching and finding more and more.
And Gerald, will you go back to China to see the ancestral home?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I don't think that I will do that. But I know that I'm kind of living vicariously when I look back. And one of the things that I felt was important, and a lot of the people here don't know, is that I formed a Facebook group 16 years ago because I recognized there was a closeness that my mom and dad's family had that was being lost because it was growing so much. And we were having cousins who might not necessarily know who their other cousins were when the kids were like the next generation down. And so I formed a group that's called I Am a Soon Too. and you have to be directly related to Soon He in order for us to allow you to come in. And it's been quite interesting getting the people together and sharing and just recreating that bond for the next generation down.
Thank you.
I have a question.
I'm not
Um,
sure.
Just
Is it
a
Harvey?
yeah, just a point on a technical point. You said the Sincere Grocery was at the corner of Robson and Georgia,
Nope, did I get it wrong? Robson and Burrard, right?
Robson and Burrard.
Oh, yeah.
That's my
Robson and
understanding.
Burrard. Sorry,
Yeah.
thank you.
Well, it's okay. And thank you for a great presentation. And I just have to say that I was surprised to see the content whereby, and it made me very proud because the Wayne and Jade are my brother and sister, and Tyler's my son. So it was wonderful to see that. Thanks again.
I think it's great that they were able to share with families so that we could live vicariously.
Yeah. But you've been doing wonderful work, so it's great.
Oh, thank you.
Gerald, it's Auntie Hazel.
Hi, Auntie Hazel.
Have you ever counted how many Soons there are from the Soon family?
I knew you were going to ask. And, you know, from the original aunties and uncle, there were 35 grandchildren. Most of us have gotten married and have had families. And Carol is here. Carol, are you here? Her late husband, Ray, who was one of my oldest cousins, he kept track of all of us. He passed away, sadly, but he had all of these records, and I was going to make that sort of my next project to ask all of the cousins, how many grandkids do you have? How many children do you have? So that we could ultimately get a number. Would be interesting to know.
Yeah.
Not sure if Carol knows.
Thank you.
Carol's here somewhere. Philip might know too, because he's my cousin's son from San Francisco. Hi, Philip. And he has a large document too, but I don't know if you've counted up how many.
No, I'll have to look more in Ray's book, but I haven't seen a total number. Yeah, but we'll get on it. Thanks.
I'll do my teacher thing. That's homework for you.
Gee, thanks. It was wonderful. We really enjoyed it, Gerald. Thank you. Yeah.
Will this recording be available for us later?
Yes, it will.
Awesome. Great.
That's great. Then I'll put it on the I Am a Soon Too, and people can see it there.
Great.
Are there any more questions for Harold, for Gerald?
I guess one thing I've always wondered when I hear you talking about your family, what is it, do you think, that compels you and the others in your family to maintain this closeness? What is it that draws you all together to information and just be together?
I think we have a great example from our family, because not only can you imagine being in a family with that many children? I know from my own grandchildren, there are squabbles, but they are also, there's much love. And I think I saw this example year after year after year growing up, where the family came together. They had their own lives, but they all came together to honor their parents. And they had fun together. they enjoyed one another's company. Sure, there were probably things that I didn't know about, but those things were all things that kind of got put aside. And it was, I don't know, this closeness that was there. And in our culture, much happens around food.
Yeah.
And I think when we had those times of gathering together and enjoying one another's company and eating together, that really cemented that bond. And I noticed when my uncle Teddy died, he was the first uncle in my memory that had passed away. And I noted, even after the service, the family got together as they do, and they had a family gathering and dinner. And wow, I mean, that cemented it for me that from birth to death, this togetherness,
Yeah.
it's there. I forgot to mention that my Uncle Jerry and Auntie Hazel taught cooking classes, and that he told me recently that they cooked for Henry Fonda and Henry Fonda's wife.
Whoa.
Wow.
So they're famous for that.
A lot of famous people in your life.
A lot of stories.
Yeah.
So when doing research, and I really felt this was important. When you find things out about your family, there are some things that you never found out when you were growing up because those are private things. And I thought, some of these private things are not my story to tell. And so I don't share those things that I find out that I think are deeply personal, and maybe the people who are no longer here may not wish their life to be, exposed in different ways. So I prefer to focus on the happy and the closeness of our family. Uncle Jerry.
It's always party time at the Soons.
Party and dancing.
We love dancing. We love music. We love food.
It's so beautiful.
Yes, and I think my memories are of my dad bringing me as a child to his brother and sister's homes. So they were friends. They weren't just brothers and sisters, but they were friends. Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions?
Last two, Pinky and I are the last two of the 23 that was in our family.
Well,
Original siblings. The last two siblings of 23.
wow.
Yeah.
And he's 95.
Wow.
You said that Uncle Pinky is 95.
No, Jerry is 95. Pinky is 91.
91.
Yes, and they are the last two. I'll tell you, when I first met the family, when I was 19, I couldn't believe it. They were at a party on East Hastings Street. And I had just met Jerry a few days before, and he sat me on a chair and he says, "Oh, I gotta go see my mom." And all these kids were running around me. I didn't have a clue who any of them were. I thought, oh, what did I get myself into? Anyways, it turned out, well, we got married, and 70 years coming up next.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And we certainly didn't have a big family like that. Imagine 23 kids running around.
Yeah.
Anyone else have anything to ask Gerald?
I wondered if you could comment on how immigration for new Chinese people has changed, like all the things that our ancestors suffered and them enlisting for the war to help get the vote for Chinese Canadians. Like, what is it like now for Chinese immigration? Is it as easy as anyone else from any other country?
Well, leading up to the Chinese Exclusionary Act, there was the head tax. And the head tax was first a small amount of money, and then it was raised, increased to try to stop the immigration. And then it was raised even more until finally they shut the doors. And then the Second World War happened. And I was told people were lining up. There were two different sides to that whole issue. There were the Chinese people who said, "This is our country. I'm going to try and do something and show that I'm a good person here and that I am a good part of this society." And there are others who would say, "Why are you doing that? Because they don't want us." And if it wasn't for those brave people who stepped forward and actually fought for this country that didn't want them, an example, and I didn't mention it because it was my mom's side of the family. My mom's brother enlisted in a secret force when Pearl Harbor happened and the Japanese entered the war. The British realized that there was this source here in Vancouver and British Columbia that was untapped. These young men who not only looked the part, but they spoke English, and so they were asked to join this secret force that they couldn't even tell their families about. That they just knew, the families just knew that they were entering the service in some way. And so my Uncle Norman, my mom's brother, went on this secret, they were trained in the interior of BC, and then they went off to spy on the Japanese. And they were even given cyanide pills in case they were caught. It was a top secret thing. Even when they came back, they were not allowed to tell their families. I found out that when the war was declared over, they were just left where they were and they had to find their way home. And so they had to work their way on merchant ships to get back to British Columbia. It wasn't until my Uncle Norman had ill effects from having malaria that they tried to figure out, well, you're a seemingly healthy young man. Why would you be getting malaria? And then it all came out. And it was because of the efforts of those men that society opened up. But Canada it was an interesting thing. They changed the rules and they said, okay, well, we'll allow the children of these people to come over, but they had to be 18 years of age and younger. Well, how many men were able to get back to China and father children? Virtually, it was very few, if any. And so that opened up the thing for Canadian citizenship. And besides that, what happened was the laws on the books at that time was it didn't go along with the human rights expectations of the United Nations, of which Canada was a part. And then gradually things opened, as we know. Families were allowed to be reunited. I forgot to mention one thing, though, that the Canadian government did during that time, that they were saying, well, okay, you had to be a certain age to be allowed to come in if you were a child of one of these people that were over here. They actually x-rayed children. They x-rayed them to determine the growth of the bones to see if they should be around that age before they would allow them to come in. And then Uncle Jerry will know, there was a point system, I think, for people to come into Canada. You had to have so many points, and I don't know now what it's like, because I haven't heard of or thought of doing the research into what it is now for people immigrating into Canada. But certainly things opened up, and there were a lot of people that came, and of course Chinatown changed over that time, because a lot of the immigrants who came in wanted to go to Richmond or to another area, and so that changed the whole dynamics of everything. The older Chinese men that were here, they started to pass away, and yeah, and so Chinatown is sadly a shadow of what it used to be. Yeah, but I'm not sure about the immigration and how it is now, Bonnie.
Rubbish.
You would think that it would be better now.
He's not on camera though. He's just got his icon up.
Is there somebody else that had a question?
Anybody else that had a question? Yes.
I can't see, so.
Yeah, either can I. Yeah. Did anybody else have a question? Is there anybody else? Well, we've got lots of messages in the chat, Gerald, that I'll send to you.
Okay.
From people that were at the presentation today. And Sam, did you have anything you wanted to say before we end this at 1 o'clock?
No, I just wanted to thank Gerald, and also, would he be willing to make a little advertisement for being a volunteer with Transcribimus?
Oh, yes. If it wasn't for the volunteer work, for that opportunity to do a little bit of digging and research, I wouldn't have known any of this. I'm not sure if I'm not sure, Uncle Jerry, you can answer this for me. Did you know of your dad's involvement in the presentation to Mackenzie King?
Yes,
You did know?
you know, in some way I did. But I went through the whole school education system here when I was young. I went to Lord Tennyson, Bayview, Britannia, and they accepted me. But it was a problem getting to go to the counselor and say to you that you should not go to the UBC, which is high school graduation, because they don't take any people for being a doctor or lawyer, and all those things. They said, you take high school graduation and get yourself a job. That was it.
Your brother had to go to control.
Yeah.
Well, if it wasn't for my work through Transcribimus, I would have never known. And as I'm transcribing and going through minutes, I'm realizing the story of Vancouver as it's developing. People are asking for streetlights. People are asking for sidewalks. People are asking for a road to be extended. And so the history of the city that I love, where I grew up, is becoming more and more real to me. And I would encourage anybody, it's not hard, to read these minutes, although the handwriting sometimes can be a little bit difficult. But the more that you do it, the more that you learn. And I love doing it and will continue doing so. And I think handwriting is not being taught so much in schools anymore. And it's a dying art. It's like the ability to read music is being lost because that's not taught so much anymore.
Mhm.
And so this wonderful source of information for our city's history would be lost if it weren't for the efforts of Sam and the people who are doing this work. So I really appreciate doing that. And you can even try one
Mhm.
and try just typing one set of minutes, and you might get hooked like I did.
Mhm.
I should say that you should go to our website at transcribimus.ca, and there'll be a link there if you'd like to volunteer as well.
Great. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. And thank you, Gerald, for just a fantastic presentation. It's my second time I've heard it. And I just get so emotional every time I listen to it. It's just wonderful. But thank you very much for presenting today. And thank you to everybody at Transcribimus for joining us and everybody who joined us today. Thank you very much.